I hope you're well. Good morning. Hopefully you can see me. Let's stop this screen share. There we go. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to be here this morning talking about school avoidance, school reluctance, and why our children generally are finding school quite tricky. I'm Chrissa, by the way. Oh, hello. I'm live on Facebook right now. You just walked in. I did say it. It was okay. It was fine. Thank you. That's okay. It's all right. Don't worry about it. Um, sorry. I'm usually in my own office, and I decided to come into the hub to do this today, and I don't have any of the equipment that I would normally have. And if you saw my setup here, you would be laughing your head off. It looks very professional this way. This way. Wow. It's hilarious. I was about to swear then. Let me see who we've got in the comments. Let's see who's saying hello. If you can see me, do say hello. I'm very ADHD this morning and all over the place. Everything's been done lastminute.com because I'm in a new space. Anybody else have that with their neurodivergence? Moving between spaces, thinking it will be fine, and then realizing how comfortable your usual space is. Morning, Natalie. Morning, Rachel Sunshine. Morning, Sue. Morning, Melanie. Morning, Claire. If you can see me, do say hello. And let me know as well where you're watching from. If school attendance is a difficulty for you, sometimes, well, to be honest with you, this isn't a regional thing. This is a global thing. I always say, or let's see if there's any sort of hotspots in the country in the comments. But to be honest with you, I think this is everywhere because it's not just us. We're getting a lot of people overseas, America, New Zealand, Australia. They're all watching our webinars because it's a global problem. And I feel a little bit more than frustrated because I have all the reasons. I've got all the knowledge in terms of why it's happening, and nobody is really listening, and certainly nobody is actioning it, and it's very, very frustrating. I'm not on about necessarily, I'm not having a go at anybody. I'm just saying it's a very big problem. It's not something a parent can fix. It's not something a teacher can fix. This is a much bigger problem. And what I would say is, before we start, tag your MP in this Facebook Live, because we are not seeing, I'm not going to talk about politics today, but with regards to the upcoming election, we are not seeing enough discussion around our children. They are the future of this country. But all I'm hearing is about house prices and rent costs and electricity. And yeah, okay, all of those are important issues. But what about our children? They're very quick to publish all these things about us overspending the money of the taxpayer. So what are you going to do about it? Because things aren't working. The reason that lots of money is being spent is because things aren't working in their current form. I've been ranting all week on my Instagram page. So if you are on Instagram, please do give me a follow, because you'll see that I do a lot of discussion on a daily basis about these topics. And apologies in advance because I've got hay fever and I might sneeze. So let me see who else we've got before I get started. So like I say, if you can see me, do say hello. I'm actually quite a nice person, I promise. I'm just bunged up, that's all. And in a new space. Morning, Kerry. Morning, Lou. Morning, Monica. Hi again, Claire. Sunshine says Hub 2 looks good. It does from that angle. If you could see the angle I'm looking from, I realized how low down my laptop was. You were looking at my nose, so I've had to prop it, like perch it on something. So if it wobbles, can you see? It's a very professional setup. Not. Okay, I'm going to get started then, guys. So if you know somebody who has difficulties with their child getting them into school, if their child is reluctant or not attending at all, by the way, tag them. Tag your MPs. We've got all the answers here. We want to hear more from them in terms of what they're going to be offering for our children with special educational needs. This is a growing problem. It's not going away, by the way. They can keep trying to silence us, but we're not going anywhere. So yes, tag, and share. Let's get the word out there, okay? Well, that just rhymed. So as I've already said, I'm Chrissa, I'm the founder of Sunshine Support. This morning, I'm going to be talking to you about why children find school so tricky. And one of the reasons I'm so passionate about this, in fact, I've got several reasons that I'm really passionate about this, is that I've got ADHD, but I didn't find out until I was in my 40s. But the ADHD was still there when I was younger, but my needs were being met. Why? I'm going to be talking about that in a second. However, I struggled with school attendance towards the end of my education. And I was hoping to bring my school reports to show you today because I found some from my sixth form years and I can't find them because I've got ADHD and I don't know where I've put them. But I know round about where they are. I just couldn't find them. But in my report, it said, we're so sad to see that Chrissa is in hospital such a lot, but we're really glad to see that she's still engaged in her learning. So that was the kind of vibe. But the conclusion was she would do so much better if she could just attend school. How much shame did that induce on me as a 16, 17-year-old trying to do my A-levels from a hospital bed, crippled with Crohn's disease, or as I was diagnosed then, ulcerative colitis. And yeah, I would have loved to have been in school. And even when I wasn't in hospital, I was really, really unwell. So physically unable and absolutely riddled with anxiety. My mental health absolutely tanked, which it often does when you have a diagnosis like that, particularly so young. And I'd been suffering on and off since age 9. So going somewhere where I didn't know where the toilets were or I couldn't access them. And let's be fair, it's really hard to access a toilet in a school, which I'll come on to in a bit. It's really, really important that we acknowledge these things because how else was I going to feel comfortable somewhere? So as I have already alluded, I'm always much more comfortable in my home office, which is where you normally see me. And I've got everything there and I've got a toilet next door to me and everything's nice and quiet and it's just me. I quite like that, but I also miss the connection of seeing people. So I like a little variance, which is why I'm here today. And I've got lots of meetings in the hub. So, but I just wanted to highlight that the major, major barriers to my learning. And so school avoidance isn't new, is it? School non-attendance isn't new. So I've got this vested interest anyway, is what I'm saying, because I experienced it myself. And several of my children, in fact, all my kids, really struggle with the thought of going to school. One of them in particular started a high school in September and she's absolutely flourished. This is where she's absolutely found herself and she's really been kind to herself about the transition. And we've enforced that and said, do not concentrate or focus on your learning. Let's get you settled in this school. And her grades are naturally very good because she's focused on our well-being. But so many of us are not aware of this stuff until it goes wrong, which is why I'm aware of it, because with my eldest, it all went wrong. So I've got a vested interest as a person who experienced it. I've got vested interest as a parent. And I also studied it as part of my master's. So I'm really passionate about this and I talk about it every day. And if you're on my Instagram page, you will know that because an awful lot of my Instagram is about this. So let me just see if we've got any more comments that I need to be aware of, any problems or anything. Oh no, lots of people. Nikki from Northampton, our son is at home again today, so she really needs this. Kat in Derby, our lovely sunshine cat, good morning. Melanie's in North Yorkshire. I do like North Yorkshire. Catherine in Belfast. I've never been and I really want to go. Natalie in Solihull. I have been there. It's posh in Solihull, isn't it? Katie, I thought you were saying you were from Daly. Oh, something I've said has prompted Katie to say Daly. Morning, Naomi. Morning, Kerry. Oh, there's lots of you watching. I'm really, really glad. I'm really glad. Now, I always like to check that we're being received before I go into a full-on rant, okay? So if I had a penny for every time somebody said to me, we didn't have all this school refusal and anxiety in my day, you know, we just got on with it. We just got booted into school. We got a smack. If we decided to stay off school, our mum and dad would give us a smack. We just got in. They'd kick us in. Okay. To which I normally reply, Okay, but we did have this. It's just people didn't talk about it, did they? But I'm going to come back to this unsolicited advice from these very well-meaning people, or not so well-meaning people, because I think their advice could be helpful to us understanding a little bit more, which is random, isn't it? But I'm going to come back to that. So stay tuned. So finding school difficult or finding school attendance overwhelming for whatever reason is not a new thing. Think back to your teenage years. Okay, they're not that long ago, guys. All right, don't beat yourself up. So a few years ago, in the teenage years of the 90s, okay, children bunked off school, didn't they? And no one knew. How did they not know? No, because nobody was recording their attendance at every lesson. Okay, so the reason we know now is that we've got so many safeguarding systems in place, and that's great. Well, safeguarding is so important. It's absolutely vital. Absolutely vital. But instead of approaching safeguarding with a judgmental hat, putting your judgmental hat on and going, oh, there's something wrong here. There's something wrong at home. Mum's not doing very well. Dad's telling them to stay off school. They're creating obstructions between us and the child. Oh, the child's just naughty. They're just one of them. Oh, she's that parent. Rather than doing all of that judgment, why don't we look at it with curiosity? I wonder why that child is struggling to go to maths. Wonder why. I wonder why that child is struggling to come in on a Wednesday. I wonder why. How can we find out? It's a much nicer way than going, rah, 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 isn't it? And you're going to get to the root of the problem. But these digital registers, in every lesson, absolutely brilliant. The automated texting systems, my child is very content in school, in her senior school. So I'm going to draw on her a little bit here. She's very content. So she attends, but I know if she didn't, that I would get a text to my phone to say she's not in her lesson. Very, very useful. GPS trackers on phones. So this is how I let go a little bit, because I have a GPS tracker on her phone. So she can, we create boundaries and she does what she needs to do, but I can always see where she is. And of course, this is really good for parents, because if your child hasn't registered for a particular lesson or afternoon or registration or morning registration or whatever, then you can track them on their phones. A lot of parents hand deliver their kids to the school. I mean, how many people in the 80s, 90s, 70s, whatever, used to walk miles to school on their own, and parents would just trust that they got there. But if they bunked off, they'd never know, would they? And so now parents are not so trusting, because we see what happens in the media, and they hand deliver them to school. I mean, that's why the school run is crazy busy with cars. Also, I'm going to be a little controversial here. Kids need ID for stuff now. So when they're purchasing their sensory breaks, okay, they need ID. Now, what do I mean by this? Some of you might have cottoned on already, but how many of the kids of the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s bunked off for a cigarette? That to me sounds like a self-medicated brain break. They were bunking off to have an hour to themselves where they could regulate again. We never thought of it as that. We thought of those as the naughty kids. They were the ADHDers, probably. They needed a bit of time. They needed a bit of space. But they self-medicated. And we just thought of them as the naughty, wild ones. Oh, God, they're risky, those kids. They're really risky. But actually, think about it. They're taking a break from people. They're taking a break from their lessons. They're taking a break from life. And they're self-medicating. So think about that. There's more to this as well, remember, because they didn't need the ID for an awful lot of stuff. So maybe it wasn't just cigarettes that they were buying. But let's think about it now through the lens that we've got. So I'm keeping an eye on the comments as well. Let's think about this through the lens that we've got now, with the knowledge that we've got now. Were those kids actually naughty? Were they? I'm looking at the comments, so do let me know your thoughts on this. Let me see if I can renew them. And I think what we need to do is it's that sort of contradiction between what we know now and what we knew then, which is it was nothing back then. We never talked about stuff like that then because it wasn't needed. Oh, we've got some really good comments. Oh, I'm going to come to some of those in a minute because I've got some more stuff planned that I think will be very relevant. But I think that those kids who needed the break, who did stuff like that, were bold. They were bold in sort of saying, no, I'm enforcing this. This is what I need. Therefore, I'm going to do it. I'm going to bunk off. I'm going to go behind the bike sheds or go down the little path at the side of school, which is where it was with my school. Or I'm just going to go home because my parents aren't there. Or my parents agree I need the break. This stuff is not new. So I think that those, though, who were not bold enough to bunk off, they then ended up suffering with their mental health. And I know because I was one of those kids. I was a very, very, very good girl. I never had detention. I never bunked off school. But I needed to so badly because as an ADHD girl, we do this thing where we hyperfixate on something, get a fantastic grade that we will never be able to achieve again because we'll never get into that zone again about that topic. And we create this expectation of ourselves, but also from the teachers of us, that we can never meet. So we're constantly pushing to be better. So our anxiety's through the roof. Apologies, hay fever. So what happened to those kids who weren't bold enough to bunk off? They probably suffered. Well, I know I did, and I've spoken to very, very candidly about this and very openly. I suffered enormous mental health problems through my late teens into my 20s, up until my late 20s. And I'm very, very happy to say that I've not taken any meds since my late 20s for my mental health, and it's all been managed through therapies. But I have had a long, hard journey to get to that point. So why are we expecting our children to do the same? Why don't we break that cycle? And I think that's what parents are doing now. We're breaking the cycle, which is why we're seen as those parents. We're seen as, why can you not just accept your child is unhappy at school? Medicate them to come. Why? That's awful. Would you do that anywhere else? You wouldn't. It's just bonkers. And we're actually, I've got a colleague who is very open about this as well, and the fact that she struggled as a child and now she has children who struggle, or a particular child actually of hers that really, really struggles. And so we've decided to do a podcast on it. So if you follow our podcast on Spotify, so if you've got Spotify, you can listen to our podcast. We're going to be recording that very, very soon. And I'm quite excited because we're going to do a lot of self-reflection on our own teenage years and also looking at our children as well, which are, our children are very similar. In fact, they're the same age as our children. So we're going to do some self-reflection and some very deep digging. So if you do listen to our podcast, listen out for that one. So I think we can agree school avoidance isn't new. We just hear about it more now. And I think as well, parents are listening to their children when they say that they're struggling. And so many of us now know that we don't have to send them to school. School isn't compulsory. It's something we opt into. Many of us do it as they come out of nursery. You sign all the forms and you say, for their education, local authority, please, can you do that for me? That's what school is. I don't think many of us know that actually. That actually the default is not to register them with school at all. But we are told and conditioned that that is the thing that we have to do. And also, we've got to work and I get all of that. And some of us don't have the equipment, the time, the patience, the education ourselves to be able to deliver an education to our children. So I get all of that, okay? I'm not trying to say I'm anti the system. I just think the system needs to change. So I think it's really important that we know that we opt into school. And in fact, we learned quite a lot about that actually in our home education webinar. So if you've not watched it and you would like to, it's on our Sunshine Academy. So just drop a comment saying home education and the team will send you the link to the Sunshine Academy. So what I want to do this morning, I'm very aware I've been on here 20 minutes already, but I do really want to do a bit of a deep dive, or at least a snorkel dive into why our children are finding school so difficult. So I'm going to come back to that unsolicited advice that I mentioned earlier and highlight a very good point that our dear old friend made to us. We didn't have all of this in my day. Number one, it's not your day anymore, is it? It's not the 70s. So our society has changed. And I think it's important that we say that, because I think as parents, you know, when you get that as unsolicited advice, I tend to go silent and ridiculous. My selective mutism kicks in and I can't say what I want to say. Or I'm very polite when actually in my head I want to say something rude, but I'm never, ever rude. However, I know some of us do have the guts to go back and say something quite, you know, stern and great, and they advocate very well for the things that they know, which is brilliant, by the way. I think it takes all of us, doesn't it? But how much would you love to say, well, it's not your day, is it, Edna? Sorry to the Ednas who are watching. I'm not trying to make Edna the new Karen or anything. But anyway, let's think about the differences in society alone. It's changed. It's changed so much. Our behaviors have changed. As you compare us now as parents to our parents, as when they were parents of children that are the same age as ours. The way we access life, the way we access our needs, our leisure, you know, everything has changed. Thinking of banking systems. Banking's completely different. My dad used to be one of those insurance premium collection men when I was really little. And when I struggled to attend school, in fact, oh my goodness, I think I struggled for quite a bit. I would actually go on his rounds with him because there was no such thing as direct debit back then. So it took a man in a car to go around, and he had a book and he had to mark everybody off, and then he had to balance his books with the cash that he'd received on the way around. That was a thing, guys. That's very different now. If you want to pay a bill, you just go straight on your phone. You go straight on your phone, boom, 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 done. You don't have to wait 4 weeks for the next time the man arrives from the Pru or whatever it was, or the co-op insurance. And I think that actually society's changed enormously, hasn't it? It's absolutely enormous. And I think that whilst we all embrace it, on, you know, to the most part, so many of the people that we need to understand this stuff of why our children can't attend school just don't or won't. And when I say the people that we need to understand, I'm talking about family, I'm talking about friends, I'm talking about teachers. Because the gaslighting that happens the minute you have a child who struggles to attend, you can see people either glazing over because they're utterly bored by what you're saying because it's gone on too long. Or one of the things that I feel, and I feel that I can't possibly share with other parents, for instance, is that there's that feeling of, oh, there she goes again. It's always her kids, isn't it? Oh, she's banging on a drum again about send. Oh, God. And we get that eye roll, don't we? I just keep myself to myself and I don't tell anyone other than my work friends, because in my sunshine bubble, we get it. But it's really, really tricky. I am the mum in the group chats, by the way, that every time I talk, everybody goes silent. It's hilarious to watch. Honestly, I'm not even contentious. I just think they go, oh God, it's her again. Nobody has time for Chrissa Wadlow. I'm all good though. My kids love me. That's the main thing. But anyway, when we did the research as well for school avoidance, we put a big survey out there, which we'll probably do again because we've got School Avoidance Week in September, remember? Oh, I'm doing all sorts of rhyming this morning. So at the end of September, we've got a whole week dedicated to school avoidance and understanding it and recovering from it. And we have got some brilliant speakers, because what we're going to be focusing on is recovery. How do we help our children recover? Because so many of you say to me, my child is burnt out. My child is so traumatized. How do we help them recover? Because they have to have an education. It might not happen in that school, but they have to have an education. So School Avoidance Week is a big one. It's on our Sunshine Academy. If you want more information, type School Avoidance Week in the comments and my colleagues will send you a bit more info. Anyway, when we did the research last time, so this would have been for last year, we found that up there with the sort of most, the biggest reason, should I say, for school avoidance were bullying, and that's student to student and teacher to student, anxiety, fear, fear was huge, overwhelm, sensory overload, communication in a classroom, safety. Safety is a massive issue, huge issue. Banter. A lot of our neurodivergent kids found banter very difficult. I find banter very difficult, but I'm happy to take part in it. But there's some people, and it's funny because my husband and I, we have this conversation quite a lot, where I'll say, this particular person, I absolutely love them. I think they're great, but their banter is so fast and eclectic. I haven't got a clue where I stand, and I find communication with them really, really tricky. So imagine if you're forced to be in that situation day after day after day and you just can't keep up. You don't understand what the intentions are. You don't read the nuances in their communication. Also, just general communication with peers. That's another reason that children struggle. So why are we ignoring that? These are genuine reasons. If any of you had these reasons for hating work or not being able to attend work, surely you would sort that out. You'd either raise a grievance or you'd leave and find a new job, wouldn't you? But it's those sorts of things are not afforded to our children. So do think about that. School climate is a huge factor that I speak at length about over on my Instagram page. In fact, I've got some infographics here that I should have prepared, but I've got them in my bag. And it's so very important that we, in fact, school climate is on the top of my infographics pack. It's so important that we appreciate this, because I talk about it all the time. And I talk about it a lot at my school avoidance webinar. In fact, I've got a school avoidance webinar next week. And so if anybody wants to learn about the sort of intricacies, and I go through the research and I go through some evidence-based stuff and the law, and the Department for Education guidance, all of that will be covered, because it's 2 hours and I get more time to speak about it. So if you want to come along to that, do comment school avoidance webinar and my team will send you the links. But I think it's really important that we cover school climate, because nobody is talking about it. Everybody is talking about EBSA, emotionally based school avoidance. It's not just emotional. You know, as a woman, I must say the word emotional 52,000 times a day. However, as a woman, so many excuses are made on my behalf that link to emotion, and it's quite demoralizing, and it's designed to gaslight. Oh, she's a woman, she's emotional. And we get, they're a teenager, it's hormones, emotions. I sometimes find that we blame so much on emotions. Emotions are there for a reason. They are highlighting a danger, perhaps. They are highlighting that we're unhappy. You know, you just have to watch the film Inside Out, or the new one, Inside Out 2. By the way, I'm not advertising it. It sounds like I'm on commission or something. But you watch those and you see our basic emotions and how they interact with each other and when two collide and how confusing that can be. We have to pay more attention to that, not just go, oh, it's emotions, because actually it could be a physical reason, actually, why a child doesn't attend school. It's not just emotional. But anyway, I want to explore more about this school climate, because school climate is huge. You can download this on our website. And if you ever come into our hub, we've got them all up on the wall. And so you can take as many as you like. We've got absolutely tons. So these are lovely, lovely infographics. But I'm going to go through this. So number one, school order, safety, and discipline. And this is all about a child's perceived safety. Do they think that the discipline in their school is fair? So one of my children, I won't name which one, but she is very empathetic and she loves to advocate on behalf of others if she sees an injustice. And quite often she gets herself in trouble for that because teachers will say, look, it's not your business. Just back off. It's all right. And she's like, no, it's not right. This is not fair. This doesn't seem ethical to me. By the way, she sounds like a future employee of Sunshine Support, and I'm very, very aware of that. But she stands up for people and she'll say to me, do you know, I feel very uncomfortable about being in that lesson, knowing that that teacher got it so wrong. Now, she's not a school avoider, but if you've got that throughout, this is one teacher in a huge school, by the way, if you had that in every lesson, can you imagine how demoralizing that would be for a child to feel like it's not fair? And I'm not on about your usual, if I give one child a blue sweet and another child a red sweet, and the one who has a blue sweet said, that's not fair, I wanted a red one as well. I'm not on about that kind of unfair. I'm on about genuine unethical practice, or an imbalance in discipline. I hate discipline, but I appreciate that we have to have rules. Okay. So I get that. But respect and fairness, it has to be respectful. So if a child does something wrong, to say, look, you got that wrong. Okay. I can understand why you got it wrong, but you know what our school rules are, rather than, there are ways to educate children. On my Instagram page this week, I said about we don't learn anything by feeling fear. We don't learn by feeling shame. We don't learn by feeling pain. That's not how we learn. Okay. We create fear from those things. So if somebody, did this sort of negative conditioning on me or something, like a reinforcement where every time I took a sip of my coffee, somebody punched me in the face, I'm not learning not to drink the coffee. I'm becoming traumatized. So I never drink coffee again, because actually that's ingrained in my DNA, So we need to remember the punishment. Consequences are different to punishment. Punishment brings about shame, pain, those things that we don't learn from them. So if you've got a school that's designed around shaming students, if you've got a school that's designed around creating, such extraordinary punishments that don't fit the crime, so to speak. If a child, I don't know, fidgets a little bit in the lesson and you give him detention, genuinely, really? Like, that doesn't seem very fair. So if your child is witnessing that and it's creating a fear in them, if they're experiencing that, it could be creating a trauma within them. So I'm going to move on. Academic outcomes, recognition for their academic outcomes. Very, very important. Some children, I know I was raised on praise. So if I don't receive praise, I just assume that I'm rubbish. I nearly said the C word then. Not that C word. But some children really love praise. Other children, particularly perhaps our PDAers, really don't like praise, because actually praise brings about expectation, pressure, demand. Educating PDAers is another ball game, by the way. That's why we've got a whole day, actually, next week, next Friday. We've got a whole day dedicated to PDA, and we've got quite a few educators in the room. We've got people going to be talking about behaviors, speech and language, communication, selective mutism, the nervous system. Yeah, got it all going on next Friday. So again, if you want that link, I may as well throw that in there as well. Comment PDA day and the team will send you the link for that. Where was I? Recognition, academic outcomes as well. If your child is really academic, but they're in a school that isn't, I see this so many times, where an autistic child can't cope with mainstream. And so they put the autistic child in a special school that doesn't do GCSEs, even though this autistic child is an absolute genius. And it's like, why are you expecting them to attend when they're attending with children with maybe severe learning difficulties who won't ever probably achieve a GCSE, but this child could achieve GCSEs at age 10. So why are we doing that? So matching that up, and I appreciate that I've created a bit of an extreme example there, but matching that up is really important. Also, the other way, we see a lot of children being just dumped into mainstream, because that's what it is. It's just dumping them into mainstream school when they're never going to achieve what their peers are set to achieve, because they've got learning difficulties, whether they've been identified or not. So making sure that they're matched up is really important. And they need to feel quite satisfied with their classes as well. So that's point number 2. Then there's school, the social relationships. I'll come on to that one next. Social relationships. Teacher to student, student to teacher, teacher to teacher, because we need to see the teachers get along, because we've all heard about the families where mum and dad argue like cat and dog, but they stay together for the sake of the kids, and the kids are so unhappy. So everybody says, but you'd be much better happy, like happier, separated, and your kids are going to be happier. Yes, it's going to be a pain in the neck. That's the same as school. If your teachers were constantly arguing and bitching about each other, the kids are not going to enjoy that. So you want to see that genuine, authentic connection between the teachers. And also the helpfulness of the staff. So not just the teachers, but the wider staff. You know, you think about how many people work in a school. There's all the dinner staff. There's the caretaker staff. You know, there's loads of staff. So it's really important that school, that all the social relationships are happy. Now, I know that's a real big ask. It's a big thing to achieve. But we work with a school who they were put into special measures. They brought a fantastic head teacher on board who was absolutely changed everything. But it all comes from him. And every time I walk in that school, he's smiling, he's welcoming. He talks to the students by name. They have 2,000 students. He talks to them. He calls them their first name. They feel important to him. And I've spoken to a number of members of staff that I actually know. And they've all said, we've never felt like this about work. We're truly excited to be there. He listens, he validates, he makes us feel connected. He makes us want to be in work. Top down, comes from that leader, trickles down. I thought somebody was at the door then. They were just going to come in on my Facebook Live. School facilities. So I said I would come back to the toileting situation. School facilities. Oh my goodness, we've seen it all over the news this year, haven't we, about the toilets? But when we think about the school facilities, of course, there's things like toilets. There's things like, you know, being able to meet their own needs with water and food as well. But we also need to be thinking about the temperature of the building, temperature of the classes, the classroom layout. Because I've noticed that looks really different actually to when I was in school. I really like the way that a lot of, well, in the classrooms that I've been in senior schools, particularly of late, they look really good. They look really engaging. I want to be in there. Also, the condition of the school. So, you know, is it falling down? Are there buildings that aren't being used? Are they boarded up windows? Does it need a lick of paint? That all makes a difference. Because yesterday, for instance, we moved our office around and at work, and I've been put in a brand new area that I've now got to get used to. By the way, I said I put myself in that area that I've got to get used to, which is great. And I really embrace change and I love it. However, I was facing the junk corner where we put like boxes of Christmas trees and baubles and bits of kit for our events and stuff like that. And it was irritating me. And I thought, I can't sit here. I'm going to have to sort it out. So I abandoned my work for the afternoon to sort out the mess that I could see in front of my eyes. And in true ADHD form, I just tucked it away somewhere for somebody else to deal with. Sorry, gang. But what I'm saying is, I wasn't feeling happy about the disarray that was around me. And I think it's really important that we appreciate that for our kids as well. And then the big one for me is school connectedness. So school connectedness is all about infused and engaged learners, that feeling of wanting to be part of a community. So we can see it stems from all of these things, but a big connection here is the social relationships. But it's that feeling of, I go to that school. Yeah, it's great. And that vibe of feeling proud, you know, feeling really proud. When I was educated in Wales, I went to a really lovely high school, comprehensive school, and we all felt very proud to be there. We felt proud to wear our blazers. We felt proud to be part of that community. And there was a great sense of pride, of belonging, because we had the best football team, we had the best hockey team, we had the best netball team, we were great singers. And I don't know if I'm honest, I don't know if we came first in all of those tournaments, but that's how we were made to feel. You are the best. You belong to a community that's the best. And I quite like that. And I think that school connectedness, I didn't have any school attendance difficulties back then. Um, and so I think, there's a lot to be said for that. So that is school climate. Now, what you might not know, and I have been working hard behind the scenes to create some infographics for you to help understanding of this. School climate and how this is all set up is very much following on from Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So give that a Google if you've not heard of it before. But I'll be sharing my version on the weekend. So it's all scheduled, ready to go. And you will see that on the weekend. It'll be on our Facebook page and Instagram page and LinkedIn page. And however you want to see us, you'll see it. But it'll be on our social media over the weekend. And by the way, don't ever feel like you can't download these things and take them into school. Save it to your phone. Because one of the most powerful things is that you didn't say it. It was someone else. So it's not you as a parent going, I think it's because of this. And I think you could say, look, I've been looking, and Sunshine Support, that woman, that Welsh woman over at Sunshine Support made this or this. And she said, and the research is, because we always quote research, particularly if you come to our school avoidance webinar, we've got a whole reading list of research that you can take into school to help you with stuff like this. So why is, though, so we've looked at school climate, okay, we understand it a little bit better, but why is it so much of an issue? Why? Well, go back to thinking about that world around you, okay? Think about how much different it is to when you were growing up. Oh, it is. It's worlds apart, isn't it? And I've spoken before about, the retail sector, the fact that, back in the day when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, if I wanted to buy something, I'd go to the shop. I had very limited money as well. My parents did not feel the pressure to give me, stupid amounts of money to go and buy expensive clothes and stuff with, like parents do today. I don't feel that pressure either, which is great. But I think that is a massive pressure, by the way. But that I'm going off topic there. I'm going off topic. But we would actually go into a shop to buy something. If I wanted to go and buy, what was it in my day? Forever Friends. Do you remember those little teddy bears? And you'd get like the pencil case and the pens and the little teddy bear and the pencil sharpener, and then you get all sorts of stuff with Forever Friends. I would go into my local Woolworths. Remember Woolworths? Oh, I loved Woolworths. I'm actually, this is very nostalgic right now, isn't it? But I'm highlighting the actual issue actually. But I would go into a shop. It wouldn't be any of this online business, would it? I would pay with cash. Or my mum would pay with a check or a card, and it would all be through a manual machine, and it wasn't connected to anything. So it wasn't networked. The money took days to come out of your account. As kids, we played out more. We had so much dopamine from the sun. There was more sun as well. But I remember in my ADHD assessment, when we sort of explored, why on earth was this not picked up sooner? I looked at all the ways that I naturally met my own needs as a child. I used to do an hour's worth of bike ride before school every day because I wanted to, and I was allowed to, as long as I got my bits and bobs done and I was ready to go. And my mum would say, yeah, absolutely, go out on your bike and I'll see you back at whatever time. Ready for school. I played football, hockey, netball, and I swam. And there was only one night a week where I didn't do any of that. And on that one night a week, I was out with my friends all night. I say all night until about 6 o'clock when it was time to come in. I'm not on about like I was a wild raver at age 6. And you look at that and look at our kids now. It's very, very different, isn't it? Social media didn't exist. So we didn't have those pressures following us home. We were also silenced as kids because kids should be, back in the 80s anyway, seen and not heard. Also, we shared clothes. We had a lot of hand-me-downs. Now, I was the oldest one, so I got the nice new stuff. But there was hand-me-downs. And for our neurodivergent members of the 40-plus community, those clothes, the reason they didn't irritate us the way that our kids are perhaps irritated by school uniform, for instance, is that they were soft. They'd been washed 50 times before they got to us. They were soft and lovely, lovely to wear. They didn't have tags because they'd worn off, even if they hadn't been cut off. And actually, with school uniform, right up until senior school, we didn't have to wear it. And it was very different, wasn't it, to what it is today? Mums, I know I'm talking from my own experience. My mum worked around us, so she worked in a school. She did very, very minimal hours. So it meant that she was at our beck and call. She was at every netball match. She was at every hockey match. She was at every singing rehearsal. She was at everything, all my swimming galas. She was there. She was there at every school drop-off, every school pickup. She didn't drive. She does now, but she didn't when I was little. So we would walk everywhere. Oh my goodness, my ADHD needs were met because I had tons of connection. It was beautiful. I had the most idyllic childhood. And that's why my ADHD wasn't picked up, because naturally we were meeting all the needs. I was getting all the dopamine that I was sort of lacking as an ADHDer. So it was absolutely great. Films, if we wanted to watch a film, we'd go to the video shop, watch it on VHS. TV was live, or you had to tape it. If you didn't tape it, you missed it. There was no on-demand entertainment. Nothing was at our fingertips. Everything was different. Everything was slower. Because these days we have no patience with stuff because everything's so quick. You think about when you used to set up your Spectrum Sinclair computer or your Sega. It would take quite a while to load. You wouldn't have, kids these days wouldn't have the patience for that. Everything was different except for one thing. You know what that one thing was? School. So we can't even compare our children's childhood now to what we experienced, whenever that was. It's absolutely worlds apart. Yet education is the same, and we're expecting them to be okay about that. So our kids are, walking around in 2024, living their best lives. Some of them, most of them. Some of them are now too affected by the system to be able to leave their bedrooms. But, society now is just so much more inclusive, and it's on demand, isn't it? So everything's instant, everything's inclusive, which is brilliant. We're making great strides forward, and things have changed so much. However, when we send them back into a school building, they go back centuries. It's not even that they go back to the 80s. They go back hundreds of years into this building where they all have to sit still on a chair, face forward, class of 30, to receive their education. So why are we as adults finding it so tricky to understand why our kids are struggling to attend school? Because actually, by sending them to school, we're asking them to time travel. It's impossible to do. Our kids, meanwhile, are finding this very, very traumatizing, very frustrating. And then when they are traumatized by their environment, so say, for instance, you've got a child with sensory difficulties, okay, or sensory processing difficulties, and you're sending them in fact, to a building similar to what I'm in now. See these lights? Okay, I'm okay with these lights. I'm okay. But somebody's just recently come to our parent and carer events, one of our cuppa and chats. By the way, you're all welcome. And they said, these lights are really affecting me, really, really affecting me. So we switched them off. And what we've done is we've bought, and you can't see it here, but we've bought lovely big floor lamps. So actually, when we've got visitors in here, rather than ask, does anybody want the lights on or off? We'll just assume that they will be tricky for some people. So rather than put them on the spot, we're going to now light the hub with beautiful warm lamps so that it's not so offensive. It's a simple change. But anyway, this particular person has said they were really, really affected by the lights. Now, if we're saying to a child that if they suffer with that, they have to go into a classroom and there's no option. They have to have these strip lights on, or these really affected, they're going to become affected by whatever lights are on the ceiling. And it can become quite traumatizing to be sent in a sensory overload situation. And we're sending them in to be re-traumatized day after day after day. And that trauma becomes quite compounded. You've got to think about it as layers. Every day is another layer. And every day is another day that you're going to have to try and unpick at some point, because it's not going to go away. You're going to have to come back to it at some point. Now, every time a child experiences something traumatizing, it starts to affect their ability to function. So I'm talking about their working memory, their executive function, working memory, planning, time management, regulating emotions, starting and finishing tasks. How many of our children struggle to start and finish something? If you say that you're going to leave somewhere and you have to give them, this is your 15-minute reminder, here's your 10-minute reminder. A lot of our children really struggle with that transition between things or places. And this becomes more compounded the more traumatized they are by being in a classroom that isn't fit for purpose, for their purpose. So, in fact, I've just had a thought. We've got a webinar on this as well. Got all the webinars at the minute. So we've got a webinar on executive function and how it's impacted by trauma. And you might have seen Natasha Hallam from Small Talk. She works really closely with Libby Hill. Natasha's delivering that presentation. I think it's on the 5th of July. So again, in the usual format, if you want to learn more about trauma and executive function and how we recover from it, comment executive function, and my colleagues will give you the link for it. And I think, to be honest with you, this is why EOTIS is on the rise. So EOTIS is the new term for EOTAS, and that's education other than in school. And that's when schooling doesn't work and has proven not to work. And so your child needs something, an education otherwise than in a school. And in fact, tonight we've got a webinar on that. We've got all the webinars. I don't know if there's any places left on that one, actually, but Kelly, my wonderful colleague, will be exploring EOTIS tonight. What it is, how you get it, how you apply, what the law says. She's very, very, very thorough. Like I said, I don't know if we've got any spaces left on that, but comment EOTIS or EOTAS and we'll send you the link for tonight's webinar. The ticket sales on that one close at 6 o'clock if they haven't already. I'm sorry if I'm directing you somewhere where there isn't any tickets. But yeah, so I'm going to be discussing, we're almost at the end of time. I've got 6 minutes left. We're going to be discussing all of this throughout all of those webinars. And so, when parents think this is going to be an easy fix, it's not. This is why we put so many webinars on around all these things, because you've got school climate, you've got the emotional side, you've got the sensory, you've got the legal side of things, you've got EHCPs, you've got EOTIS, you've got executive function, you've got trauma, there's so much in it. And one of the things, if you don't want to attend our webinars, that's absolutely fine as well. It's difficult for us to deliver all the education that we need in these lovely things. But if you want to, we've got all of these on our website ready to download, but we also have them in our hub. So I will show you a little bit here. I don't know whether you can see. Can you see that wall there? Oh, there we go. Which way am I tilting you? There we go. Can you see that wall there? That's full of these infographics. So if you come into the hub, if you're local, pop in and pick some up. You can take some for your workplace. If you work in the NHS or in a school and you're going to find them useful, they're really, really great. You've got anxiety, low self-esteem, trauma, school refusal, behaviors, returning to school, you name it, we've got it. EHCPs, a lot. So if you want to come and collect some of those, you're very, very welcome. Like I say, I'm going to be discussing it in quite a lot of detail next week. So if you do want to come along to that, just comment and we'll send you the link. Because I think that this is I'm going to come to your comments now, but I think this is it's a very, very, very stressful thing. for parents to go through. Very, very stressful. And I don't think anybody fully appreciates the trauma and stress the parents go through. That's why we have our cuppa and chats. So if you want to come along to any of those, they're free to attend. You can come in person, or we do the online one. We had an online one last night, actually. And another thing that we're doing, actually, that I'm really looking forward to in a couple of weeks, is we're having cocktails and mocktails here at the hub. And quite a lot of our staff are going to be here. And that's going to be really fun. So we've got Mambo bars. I'm digressing now. I'm going to come to your comments in a second, but we've got Mambo bars who are enormous fun and just a delightful bunch of people. They're coming to teach us how to make cocktails and mocktails, and there's free drinks all night. It's going to be a really good social event in a really safe space because it's in our lovely hub here. So if you want to come along, there might be a couple of tickets left to that. I know that's been a really, really popular one. So just comment cocktails and we'll send you the link to that. Okay. Sue says, oh, actually, I think there was something specific about what I've said. Donna said she's just hired one of our advocates as she's struggling with this issue. It's tough. I have an advocate, Donna. Honestly, I think that when it comes to your children, you become so emotional as well. All the legal knowledge and stuff just drops out of my head because of executive function trauma. Katie says, so many people who I thought were true friends have shown their true colours when it comes to send. Louise says, when my nan says we didn't have all of this in my day, I follow with, you didn't have coloured televisions either, but you're happy to watch your soaps on the coloured television. I love that. I absolutely love that. Vicky says, my little one has been electively home educated for a year now, meltdowns every day, especially a Wednesday. I was fined for non-attendance, no help from setting. And it's really, really sad, Vicky, because elective home ed is that's what a lot of parents want to do. I love that. I think it's brilliant. And I think if you've got the time, the patience, the inclination, the executive function to be able to pull a curriculum together for your children. In fact, I know the word curriculum is sort of frowned upon, but a plan of action for the week, so that they don't get bored more than anything, and so that they do progress and their little sort of grey matter is ticking over. I think that that is just a delight, and I admire those parents. We've got a home educator in our team, and I say to her every week, I absolutely admire what you achieve. Her children are so happy and clever. And that's what and they're all connected as a family. Like they've got beautiful connections. And I absolutely admire what she achieves with them. And home ed is brilliant. For so many of us, it's just not an option. And EOTIS can also be quite tricky as well. Michelle says, I had to electively home educate for almost a year, but Portsmouth City Council have taken me to court, so my child is going back to school. He's neurodivergent. I want flexi schooling. Let us know if we can help with that, because flexi schooling is really good, and that can be done under an EHCP as well. Vicky says, oh, this is heartbreaking, but I totally relate. Totally relate, Vicky. I always figured everyone felt the same as me at school, sad and scared. Michelle says, I suffered in school. I think I still have trauma now. We did a Facebook Live, Kelly Jarvis and I, Kelly, who heads up our advocacy team. We did a Facebook Live on the generational curses almost, So I know that if you go back and have a look at our Facebook Lives, they'll be in the video section of our Facebook page. I know that it's something that, on reflection, I wondered whether I caused my child school avoidance because I'd had school avoidance. So did I give up too quickly when she was struggling? I think there's definitely more that I could have done, but I didn't have the knowledge. I have the knowledge now, but I didn't have the knowledge then, because we're talking quite a while ago, because I've been a SEND parent for several decades. And I think that there may be more that I could have done. But hindsight's great, isn't it? What I decided to do at that point when I was doing that reflection is get some really decent trauma therapy, which I know I talk about a lot, to make sure that my school avoidance and the trauma that I felt when I went to school, and then the trauma that my eldest child went through, I didn't want that to affect the education of my younger children. And so far, so good. So far, so good. But it's so hard because we do relate to our kids, but also if our children are neurospicy, the chances are we are as well. So, Robin says, spot on, ADHD girl, always late because I was self-medicating and I was just lazy. That's what they were thinking. They didn't need time to regulate before entering a shouty classroom, and then I would isolate when I got home. You think back, you almost like put a different thinking cap on, your 80s thinking cap, and you're like, oh, you are one of those naughty delinquents. I think we were called delinquents, although I was a very good girl, but I was suffering with my mental health, never self-medicated. But you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Yvonne says, I wasn't a naughty kid, but I was definitely a labeled one. Bunking off for brain breaks. Oh my God, there's so many comments. I would love to get through them all. Lindsay says, I remember being in primary and refusing to go to school for 2 weeks. We had to attend a meeting with the headmaster. I couldn't give a reason why, but he wouldn't let me leave that office until I gave one. So I had to lie because all I wanted to do was leave. That was 33 years ago. Nothing has changed, Lindsay. This is what's sad. This is exactly what I'm talking about. The attitudes haven't changed. Science has changed. We know all this stuff. We create all these amazing things. Yeah, this is just a snippet of what we do here. We create all of these based on research. They're not just things we've plucked out of the sky or things that we're doing to defend our naughty selves or naughty children. These are all genuine things that have been brought about by research and science. So why is the practice not following that? It's just absolutely crazy. Oh, got my phone. My son hasn't been in school since Easter, and before then, he could only manage 1 hour of his 4-hour part-time timetable, refused specialist placement, not even offered SRP, so going to have to appeal EHCP. Meanwhile, he's not getting any form of education, and who is receiving the money for him? This is another thing that I have a gripe about, because not only are they not educating, but they're paying somebody to educate, and where is that money going? Because he's not on roll anywhere, not officially. Like, he might be on roll, but he's not there, is he? It's absolutely heartbreaking. And part-time timetable shouldn't be used to manage behaviours, or that's actually in the guidance from the DV. We're going to go through that actually at the webinar next week. But one of the things that I talk about in my school avoidance webinar is about this part-time timetable. We go through the law actually. And what we've got to remember is if a child sees a building as a burning building that's going to hurt them, whether they're in it for half an hour or 5 hours makes no difference, because they're still going to feel like they've been burnt. And I think an awful lot of our educators don't realize that. They think they're doing a nice thing by doing part-time timetables. And it does work for some children, particularly if what they're sort of experiencing is like fatigue. So they can attend, but for short bursts. Yvonne says, I struggled to get mine in today because some are on trips and it's a change. I asked school to support this week and they didn't even acknowledge my email. Do you know, I'm going to end on that note because this sounds very familiar when you're absolutely begging for people to just do the prep, work with you. Please work with us. Please, please, please. And so just know, guys, that I see you. Okay, not physically, okay? But I understand what you're going through. I get it. And I hope today's been really validating. And that's one of the things I think that you will come to expect from our webinars, if you wanted to go to any of the ones that I've spoken about, is that there's huge amounts of validation and everything we do is based on research. So if you want to come to any of those webinars, you're very, very welcome. If you want to come and see us in the hub, in this beautiful space, for a cuppa, or maybe you want to come and make a cocktail or a mocktail with us, you're very, very welcome. And we are looking forward to seeing so many of you next week for PDA Day. I know that's almost full now. And we're looking forward to filling this hub full of very emotional parents and brilliant professionals who want to learn more, because I think all the professional tickets have sold out, which is just a delight. It's a delight to see. I love it when the professional tickets sell out, because it means professionals want to learn, which is fantastic. But we're all going to be sat in here, probably crying together. I'll be one of you. I'm a parent of a child with PDA, so I completely get it. So we're looking forward to that. Looking forward to having a good cry. But if you need us, if any of these things that I've spoken about has touched a nerve, or you think that, you know what, that we need to get help with this, send us a message on Facebook. We'll absolutely help you. We've got calls available on our website as well, so you can book a free call. But if you don't get that far and all you can do is send us a message, then send us a message. We are absolutely happy to help you. And even if it's that we give you a big virtual hug, there's always a lovely sunshine, warm welcome and hug waiting for the people who want it. So don't be a stranger. Get in touch if you need us. But have a lovely day. Looks like the sun is shining. Long may that continue. And I'll be back on Tuesday morning next week, 9:30. I'll be doing another Facebook Live. So do join me. See you soon. Bye.